Jake rolled into Bullia just after lunch, the sun still high and the heat shimmering off the bitumen. The road had been long and lonely, a ribbon of cracked asphalt stretching through the endless Queensland outback. He'd been driving for hours, the landscape barely changing, red dirt, scrubby spinifex, and the occasional kangaroo bounding in the distance. This was the real Australia, he thought, the wild, empty heart of the country, where stories grew as tall as the termite mounds. The town's welcome sign, home of the mysterious Min Min light, stood out against the endless blue sky. Jake grinned, snapping a selfie with the sign for his travel vlog. Another day, another legend, he said into his phone, his American accent echoing in the stillness. Let's see if the Outback can do better than those drop bear stories. Bullia was small, just a handful of streets, a general store, a petrol station, and the pub, its corrugated iron roof gleaming in the afternoon sun. Jake parked his battered rental four-wheel drive and stretched, feeling the heat radiate from the ground. He'd heard about the Min Min lights from other backpackers, but most of them had laughed it off. Just another Aussie prank, they'd said, like the time someone tried to convince him that koalas were carnivorous. Still, there was something about the way the locals talked about the lights, half joking, half serious, that made him curious. He slung his pack over his shoulder and headed for the pub, the only place in town that seemed to have any life in the heat of the afternoon. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of beer and old wood. A few locals sat at the bar, their hats pushed back, boots propped on the brass rail. Conversation paused as Jake walked in, then resumed with a few sidelong glances. He ordered a beer, trying to look casual, and took a seat near the window. "Not from around here, are ya?" the bartender said, pouring a schooner with practiced ease. Jake grinned. "Is it that obvious?" The bartender laughed. "We don't get many Yanks this far west. What brings you to Bullia?" Jake took a sip of his beer, savoring the cold bite. "Heard about your famous Min Min lights. Figured I'd come see for myself." A ripple of amusement went around the bar. One of the older men, his face tanned and creased like old leather, leaned over. "You chasing ghosts, mate? Or just looking for a good story?" "Bit of both," Jake said. "I've heard all about drop bears and hoop snakes. Figured I'd see what other tall tales you've got out here." The old man's eyes twinkled. "Drop bears'll get you if the lights don't. Name's Bill, by the way. Most folks just call me Old Bill." Jake shook his hand, feeling the man's grip strong despite his age. "Jake. So, what's the deal with these lights? Some kind of Outback will-o'-the-wisp?" Old Bill's smile faded a little. "You can laugh, but plenty have seen 'em. Not all come back the same. Some don't come back at all." The bar quieted. Jake felt a prickle of unease, but he covered it with a smirk. "You trying to scare me off, Bill?" "Just telling you what I know," Bill said, his voice low. "If you're heading out to the Min Min Hotel ruins, set a waypoint on your phone when you stop. Mark your camp. Out there, it's easy to lose your way. The lights. They don't like to be followed." Jake raised his beer in a mock salute. "Noted. I'll drop a pin, just in case the ghosts get me." The locals chuckled, but Bill just watched him, eyes steady. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Jake finished his beer, feeling the weight of the old man's gaze. He shrugged it off, he'd heard scarier stories in hostels from Sydney to Darwin. Still, as he left the pub, he glanced back. Bill was still watching, his expression unreadable. Outside, the sun was still bright, the afternoon stretching ahead. Jake checked his phone, plenty of daylight left for the drive. He loaded up his gear, double-checked his water and supplies, and set off down the road toward the Min Min Hotel ruins, 112 kilometers of emptiness ahead. The road was rough, the landscape flattening into a sea of red and gold. Jake played music for a while, but the signal faded, leaving only the hum of tires and the occasional call of a crow. He recorded a quick video for his vlog, joking about hunting ghosts in the outback and promising his viewers a real Aussie mystery. As the kilometers ticked by, the isolation pressed in. The sun was still high when he finally saw the crumbling remains of the Min Min Hotel, a few stone walls, half swallowed by grass and dust. He pulled off the road, the silence almost total. Jake got out, stretching his legs and looking around. The place felt ancient, the air heavy with stories. He set up his small tent, laid out his sleeping bag, and started a campfire, the flames flickering in the growing dusk. Remembering old Bill's warning, Jake pulled out his phone and, with a theatrical flourish, dropped a GPS pin at his campsite. "There you go, Bill," he said to the empty air. "Just in case the spooks come for me." He laughed, but the sound seemed to vanish into the vastness. The outback was different at night, bigger, emptier, and somehow alive. Jake sat by the fire, watching the last light fade, and wondered, just for a moment, if maybe the old man had been right. The last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deep orange and bruised purple. The air, still warm from the day's heat, began to cool, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant eucalyptus. Jake sat by his small campfire, the flames casting dancing shadows on the ancient stone ruins of the Min Min Hotel. He'd finished his dinner, a can of lukewarm beans and some day-old bread, and was now just listening to the silence. It wasn't truly silent, though. There was the faint rustle of unseen creatures in the scrub, the distant cry of a dingo, and the almost imperceptible hum of the vast, empty land. He pulled out his phone, intending to record another vlog entry, but the signal was long gone. Just as well, he thought. This was about being present, about experiencing the outback, not just documenting it. He leaned back, watching the stars begin to prickle the darkening sky. There were more stars out here than he'd ever seen, a dazzling, impossible tapestry that made him feel incredibly small. It was then he saw it. At first, he thought it was a distant car, maybe someone else heading to Bullia, or a local on a late drive. A faint, yellowish glow, low on the horizon, perhaps a few kilometers away. He watched it, idly wondering who would be out here at this hour. But the light didn't move like a car. It hovered, a steady, soft luminescence, then seemed to drift slowly upwards, then down again, almost like a balloon caught on an invisible current. Jake frowned. No, not a car. Too steady, too high? Maybe a drone. He'd seen some crazy drone footage online, but out here, in the middle of nowhere. He picked up his phone again, trying to zoom in, but the screen was just a black mirror. The light began to grow brighter, a soft, ethereal white, and it seemed to be getting closer. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it drifted towards him. Jake felt a prickle on the back of his neck. This wasn't a car. This wasn't a drone. This was different. He stood up, his eyes fixed on the light. It was now perhaps a kilometer away, a distinct, glowing orb, about the size of a basketball, but with a hazy, indistinct edge. It pulsed faintly, a gentle, rhythmic throb that seemed to resonate with the silence of the outback. His heart started to beat a little faster. "All right, Min Min," he muttered, trying to sound brave, but his voice was a little shaky. "Show me what you got." He took a step towards it, then another. The light seemed to respond, drifting a little closer, then stopping. It was like it was waiting for him. Jake felt a strange pull, a curiosity that warred with a growing sense of unease. He remembered old Bill's words, the lights. They don't like to be followed. He stopped, a shiver running down his spine despite the warm night. The light hovered, then began to move again, not towards him, but parallel to him, as if inviting him to walk alongside it. It was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. Jake hesitated for a long moment, then grabbed his small flashlight and started walking. Just a little closer, he told himself. Just to get a better look. He'd prove it was some kind of atmospheric phenomenon, or maybe a trick of the eye. He'd get his story, his proof, and then he'd head back to camp. He walked for what felt like 10 minutes, his eyes glued to the light. It maintained its distance, always just out of reach, a silent, glowing companion in the vast darkness. The ground was uneven, covered in low-lying scrub and rocks, and he stumbled a few times. He glanced back, trying to spot his campfire, but the darkness had swallowed it. The ruins were gone too, swallowed by the endless night. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He walked further than he intended. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the GPS app. He'd set that waypoint, hadn't he? Just a quick check, and he'd be back on track. He tapped the icon. The screen flickered, then went blank. He tried again. Nothing. The phone was dead. No, not dead, the battery was full. It just wasn't working? The screen remained stubbornly dark, unresponsive. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of his bravado. He tried his phone again, pressing buttons, shaking it. Nothing. He looked up. The Min-Min light was still there, hovering, its glow now seeming to mock him. And it was closer. Much closer. It was no longer a distant orb. It was a hazy, luminous cloud, perhaps 20 feet across, pulsating with a soft, internal light. It was silent, utterly silent, yet he felt its presence, a strange, almost electrical hum in the air. The air around it seemed to shimmer, distorting the stars behind it. Jake took a step back, then another. His heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't a trick. This wasn't a prank. This was real. And he was alone. Deep in the outback. With something he couldn't explain. He turned, trying to retrace his steps, but the landscape was a featureless black canvas. Every direction looked the same. The stars were still there, but they offered no guidance. The Min-Min light, however, was still there, a silent, glowing sentinel, now directly behind him. He started to walk faster, then to jog, pushing through the scrub, tripping over unseen roots. He called out, his voice swallowed by the vastness. "Hello? Anyone there?" Only the echo of his own fear answered him. The light followed, always just behind him, sometimes seeming to drift ahead, then fall back, playing with him. He felt a growing sense of disorientation, a dizzying confusion that made it impossible to tell which way was which. The ground seemed to tilt, the trees to shift. He was lost. Truly, utterly lost. And the Min-Min light was his only companion in the terrifying, endless night. Jake stumbled through the darkness, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts. The outback night pressed in on him from all sides, thick and impenetrable. Every step seemed to take him further from safety, further from the warmth of his campfire and the crumbling comfort of the old hotel ruins. The only constant was the Min-Min light, drifting silently behind him, sometimes to the side, sometimes ahead, always just out of reach. He tried to focus on the stars, to use them as a guide, but the sky was a dizzying swirl of unfamiliar constellations. The Southern Cross, which he'd learned to spot in Sydney, seemed to mock him now, so small, so far away, so utterly useless. The ground was uneven, littered with rocks and tufts of spinifex that snagged at his boots. Every so often, he'd trip and go sprawling, the hard earth scraping his palms and knees. Time lost all meaning. Jake's watch glowed faintly, but the numbers seemed to blur and shift. Minutes felt like hours. The air grew colder, the silence deeper. He called out a few times, "Hello? Anyone out there?" But his voice was swallowed by the vastness, as if the land itself refused to acknowledge him. The Min light was relentless. Sometimes it would vanish for a few heartbeats, plunging him into total darkness, only to reappear somewhere else, closer or farther, always watching. Jake's mind began to play tricks on him. He thought he saw shapes moving in the shadows, figures darting between the trees, faces peering from behind rocks. He heard whispers, soft and urgent, carried on the wind. He told himself it was just the Outback, just his imagination, but the fear was real, gnawing at his resolve. He tried to remember old Bill's story, the way the old man's voice had dropped when he spoke of the lights. Not all come back the same. Some don't come back at all. Jake had laughed then, but now the words echoed in his mind, a warning he couldn't shake. His phone was still dead, the screen stubbornly black. He tried turning it off and on, tried shaking it, tried pleading with it. Nothing. The GPS was useless, the compass no better. He was alone, truly alone, in a place that felt older than time. At one point, he thought he saw another light, a faint, flickering glow, like a campfire in the distance. Relief surged through him. Maybe another traveler, maybe help. He stumbled toward it, calling out, but as he drew closer, the light faded, dissolving into the night. It was just another trick, another illusion. The Min light pulsed brighter, as if amused by his desperation. Jake's bravado was gone now, replaced by a raw, animal fear. He tried to retrace his steps, but every direction looked the same. The landscape shifted and twisted, the familiar landmarks gone. He was trapped in a maze of darkness and silence, with only the light to guide, or torment, him. He thought about his family back home, about the friends who would laugh at his stories, about the vlog he'd planned to post. None of it mattered now. All that mattered was surviving the night. He found himself talking to the light, pleading with it, bargaining. "Okay, you win. I get it. You're real. Just let me go back. Let me find my camp." His voice cracked, the words lost in the emptiness. The light hovered, silent and implacable. Exhausted, Jake finally collapsed onto the hard ground, curling up against the cold. The light drifted closer, bathing him in its eerie glow. He squeezed his eyes shut, willing it to go away, but the light was there, even behind his eyelids, a persistent, pulsing presence. Sleep came in fits and starts, broken by strange dreams. He saw faces in the light, heard voices calling his name. He dreamed of endless roads, of being chased by shadows, of never finding his way home. When he woke, the sky was beginning to pale, the first hints of dawn creeping over the horizon. The Min light was gone, vanished as if it had never been. The silence was softer now, the fear receding with the darkness. Jake sat up, shivering, his clothes damp with dew. He pulled out his phone, more out of habit than hope. The screen flickered to life, the GPS signal strong and clear. He stared at the map, relief flooding through him. His campsite was less than a kilometer away. He stood, legs trembling, and began to walk. The Outback was different in the morning, still vast, still empty, but no longer menacing. The sun rose, painting the land in gold and pink, and Jake felt the fear drain away, replaced by a strange, lingering awe. He found his camp just as the sun cleared the horizon. The fire was cold, the tent untouched. It was as if nothing had happened, as if the night had been just a bad dream. But Jake knew better. He'd seen the light. He'd felt its power. And he would never laugh at Aussie legends again. Jake packed up his camp in the soft, golden light of morning, hands still shaking as he rolled his sleeping bag and stowed his gear. The world felt different now, quieter, as if the land itself was holding its breath. He glanced back at the ruins of the Min Min Hotel, half expecting to see the light hovering in the shadows, but there was nothing. Just the stones, the red earth, and the endless sky. He started the four-wheel drive and turned back toward Boulia, the road stretching ahead like a lifeline. The drive felt shorter this time, the landscape less threatening in the daylight. Still, every time he glanced in the rearview mirror, he half expected to see a pale glow following him, just out of sight. By the time he rolled into town, the sun was well up and the streets were already warming. Jake parked outside the pub, his throat dry and his nerves still raw. He hesitated for a moment, then pushed open the door. Inside, the pub was much the same as the day before, cool, dim, and filled with the low murmur of conversation. A few locals looked up as he entered, their faces unreadable. The bartender gave him a nod, sliding a glass of water across the bar without a word. Jake took a long drink, then set the glass down with a shaky hand. "Morning," he managed, his voice rough. Old Bill was there, sitting in his usual spot, a mug of tea cradled in his hands. He looked Jake up and down, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. "You look like you've seen a ghost, mate." Jake tried to laugh, but it came out as more of a croak. "Something like that." The other patrons watched, some with curiosity, others with the knowing amusement of people who'd seen this before. Jake felt their eyes on him, but for once, he didn't care about looking tough. He slid onto the stool next to Bill. "You were right," he said quietly. "About the lights. About getting lost. I thought it was all a joke." Bill nodded, his eyes kind. "Most do, until they see for themselves." Jake stared at his hands, the memory of the night still vivid. "I set the waypoint, like you said. But my phone died? Everything just stopped working. I tried to follow the light, but it kept moving. I got turned around. I thought I'd never find my way back." Bill sipped his tea, then set the mug down. "The Outback's got a way of humbling folks. The lights. They're part of it. Some say they're spirits, some say it's just the land playing tricks. Doesn't much matter, does it? You made it back. That's what counts." Jake nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing a little. The bartender slid him a plate of toast and eggs, and he realized he was starving. He ate in silence, the simple food grounding him. After a while, the locals drifted over, offering quiet congratulations and a few gentle jabs. "Didn't think we'd see you again, mate," one said with a wink. "Thought the Min Min had claimed another tourist." Jake managed a smile. "Almost did." He pulled out his phone, showing them the GPS waypoint, the dead screen from the night before, the shaky video he'd managed to record before things went wrong. The locals watched, nodding, sharing their own stories, some funny, some chilling, all tinged with the same respect for the land and its mysteries. As the morning wore on, Jake felt the fear recede, replaced by a strange sense of pride. He'd faced the unknown and come out the other side. He'd learned something, not just about the Min Min lights, but about himself. Before he left, old Bill clapped him on the shoulder. "You'll have a story to tell now, eh?" Jake grinned, the old bravado returning, but softer now, tempered by experience. "Yeah. And this time, I'll tell it straight." He stepped out into the sunlight, the town of Boulia waking up around him. The Outback stretched away in every direction, vast and mysterious, and Jake knew he'd never look at it the same way again. Jake parked his four-wheel drive on the edge of the dusty road just outside Bullia, the town's low buildings fading into the shimmering heat behind him. He set up his small camera on the bonnet, framing himself with the endless outback stretching away in the background. The morning sun was already bright, but Jake's face was thoughtful, his usual swagger replaced by something quieter. He took a deep breath and started recording. "Hey everyone, it's Jake. I'm out here in the real Outback, and I've got a story for you, one I didn't expect to tell." He held up his phone for the camera, showing the GPS waypoint he'd set the day before. "See this? That's the pin I dropped at my camp near the Min Min Hotel ruins. I know, it sounds like overkill, but last night I was glad I listened to the locals." Jake paused, glancing at the horizon. "I came out here thinking the Min Min lights were just another Aussie joke, like drop bears or hoop snakes. But what I saw last night, what I felt, was real. I got lost. My phone stopped working. The only thing that got me back was the sun coming up and this waypoint I'd set before everything went weird." He looked straight into the lens, his voice steady. "If you ever come out here, or anywhere this wild, don't just chase the stories, respect them. Set a waypoint. Listen to the people who know the land. Out here, it's easy to get lost, and sometimes, you don't get a second chance." Jake ended the recording, turning off the camera and slipping his phone back into his pocket. He stood for a moment, letting the silence of the outback settle around him, then climbed into the driver's seat. As he started the engine and pulled back onto the road, he glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting, half hoping to see a pale, ghostly light following him into the endless Australian wild.